It took exactly 47 seconds. Just 47 seconds for Ahmed Ahmadi to transform from an ordinary software engineer enjoying a holiday celebration into the hero who saved dozens of lives. In that impossibly brief window of time, while chaos erupted around him and gunfire tore through the warm Australian evening, Ahmed made a choice that defied every human instinct for self-preservation. What happened in those 47 seconds would be captured on camera, shared millions of times, and forever change how we think about courage. But to understand why Ahmed ran toward the gunfire instead of away from it, we need to go back to the beginning of that December evening when everything was still perfect. December 15th, 2025. The first night of Hanukkah. Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, was transformed into something magical. String lights wound through temporary pavilions set up along the sand. The smell of latkes and sufganiyat drifted on the ocean breeze. Nearly 1,000 people had gathered for what had become an annual tradition, a massive public Hanukkah celebration that brought together Jewish families from across Sydney and beyond. Children ran along the beach, their laughter mixing with the sound of waves. Parents stood in groups, chatting while keeping one eye on their kids. Elderly couples sat in folding chairs, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ahmed Ahmadi wasn't Jewish, but he had been invited by his colleague and friend, David Rosenberg, who worked with him at Tech Vision Systems, a software development company in downtown Sydney. David had been asking Ahmed for weeks to come to the celebration. "You'll love it," David had promised. "Great food, beautiful setting, and you'll finally meet Rachel and the kids." Ahmed had hesitated at first, not because he wasn't interested, but because he was naturally reserved, the kind of person who preferred quiet evenings at home to large social gatherings. But David had been persistent, and Ahmed's wife, Nadia, had encouraged him to go. "You work too much," she had told him that morning. "Go, have fun with your friend. I'll be fine here with the kids." So Ahmed had gone, arriving just as the sun was beginning to set. He found David near one of the food pavilions, and his friend had greeted him with the kind of bear hug that made Ahmed laugh despite his usual awkwardness with physical affection. David's wife, Rachel, was warm and welcoming, and their two children, 8-year-old Leah and 6-year-old Jacob, were full of energy, asking Ahmed endless questions about what it was like to be a computer programmer. "Can you hack into anything?" Jacob asked with wide eyes. Ahmed smiled. "Not exactly how it works, but I'll teach you some coding tricks if your dad says it's okay." The evening had been beautiful. Ahmed found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did at social events. Maybe it was the ocean air, or the infectious joy of the celebration, or simply the kindness of the people around him. He ate too many latkes, laughed at David's terrible jokes, and even joined in when a group started singing traditional Hanukkah songs, despite not knowing any of the words. At one point, standing at the edge of the gathering and looking out at the ocean, Ahmed had thought about how lucky he was. He had a good job, a loving family, friends like David who cared about him. Life, in that moment, felt uncomplicated and good. But then, at exactly 7:47 p.m., everything changed. The first gunshot shattered the evening like glass breaking. Ahmed's brain didn't immediately process what he was hearing. For a split second, he thought it might be fireworks, someone celebrating early. But then came the second shot, and the third, and suddenly the screaming started. Pure, primal terror that cut through every other sound. Ahmed's head snapped toward the source of the noise, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Two men dressed entirely in black stood on the pedestrian bridge that overlooked the beach celebration. They were positioned about 30 feet above the crowd, and each was holding what looked like a shotgun. Even from a distance, Ahmed could see the mechanical, methodical way they were moving, aiming, firing, reloading. This wasn't random, this wasn't panic, this was execution. The scene around Ahmed dissolved into chaos. People were running in every direction, stumbling over chairs and tables, trampling decorations in their desperate rush to escape. Parents were screaming for their children. The elderly were being knocked down in the stampede. Ahmed saw one woman fall near him, clutching a baby to her chest, and without thinking, he reached down and helped her to her feet. "Run!" he shouted, pushing her toward the street. "Get away from here!" But even as he said it, Ahmed realized something that made his stomach drop. Most people were running toward the street, toward what seemed like safety. But the gunmen had positioned themselves perfectly. The bridge created a bottleneck, and the panicked crowd was funneling directly into the shooter's line of fire. Ahmed could see bodies on the sand, people who hadn't made it. The death toll was climbing with every second. And then Ahmed's eyes found David Rosenberg. His friend was about 50 feet away, near one of the overturned food pavilions. He was on the ground, and at first, Ahmed thought he might have been shot. But then he saw David was shielding someone, his daughter Leia. The little girl was crying, her hands over her ears, and David was covering her with his own body, trying to make himself as large as possible to protect her. Rachel was there too, huddled with Jacob, all of them frozen in terror, as bullets continued to rain down around them. Time seemed to slow. Ahmed could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Every instinct in his body was screaming at him to run, to get away, to survive. He had a wife at home. He had 2 young sons who needed their father. The rational part of his brain was calculating his odds. If he ran now, if he made it to his car, he could be safe in minutes. Nobody would blame him. This wasn't his fight. But then he heard his father's voice in his head. Ahmed's father, Ahmed Ahmadi, had died 3 years earlier from cancer. In the final weeks of his life, when the pain medication made him drift in and out of consciousness, he had called Ahmed to his bedside. "Listen to me," Hassan had said, his once strong voice reduced to a whisper. "I know I taught you to be careful, to be safe, to think of your family first. And that's good. But there's something else you need to know." He had gripped Ahmed's hand with surprising strength. "If you ever find yourself in a moment where you can save someone, where you can step between evil and innocence, you must act. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because that's what it means to be human. Do you understand?" Ahmed had nodded, not really understanding, not imagining he would ever face such a moment. But now, standing on Bondi Beach with gunfire echoing around him and his friend's family trapped in the open, those words came back with crushing clarity. He understood. Ahmed didn't make a conscious decision. Later, he wouldn't be able to explain exactly what happened in his mind during those crucial seconds. But his body moved before his brain could override it. Instead of running away from the gunfire, he ran toward it. The pedestrian bridge was about 100 feet away. Ahmed was not an athletic man. He spent his days sitting at a computer, and his idea of exercise was taking the stairs instead of the elevator. But fear and adrenaline gave him speed he didn't know he possessed. He ran harder than he had ever run in his life, his dress shoes slipping on the sand, his lungs burning with each breath. As he ran, part of his mind registered the absolute insanity of what he was doing. He was running toward men with guns, men who were actively shooting people, men who would almost certainly kill him the moment they saw him coming. But another part of his mind, the part that sounded like his father, kept pushing him forward. One more step. Just one more step. The bridge had stairs leading up to it from the beach level. Ahmed hit those stairs at full speed, taking them 2 at a time. His legs felt like they were on fire. His heart was hammering so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. 15 steps, 20 steps. He could hear the gunfire more clearly now, louder, closer. He could smell the acrid smoke from the weapons. And then he was at the top of the bridge. The gunman closest to Ahmed, the one on the right side of the bridge, had his back partially turned. He was focused on the crowd below, methodically firing into the mass of people trying to escape. He was wearing all black, black pants, black jacket, black gloves. A ski mask covered his face. Ahmed could see the shotgun in his hands, could see the man's shoulders absorb the recoil with each shot. For just a fraction of a second, Ahmed hesitated. This was his last chance to turn back, to dive behind cover, to save himself. Every cell in his body was begging him to stop, to hide, to run. The man had a gun. Ahmed had nothing. This was suicide. But then the gunman adjusted his aim, and Ahmed saw where he was pointing. Directly at the overturned pavilion. Directly at where David and his family were hiding. The hesitation vanished. Ahmed didn't think about technique. He didn't think about strategy. He just launched himself forward with every ounce of strength he had left. His shoulder hit the gunman in the back, and the impact sent both of them crashing into the bridge railing. The shotgun went off, the blast deafening at close range, the shot going wild and hitting nothing but sky. They fell together, a tangle of limbs and desperation. Ahmed's ears were ringing from the gunshot. His shoulder screamed in pain from the impact, but he held on, his arms wrapped around the gunman's torso, trying to pin his arms, trying to prevent him from bringing the weapon to bear. The gunman was stronger than Ahmed. That became clear immediately. He twisted violently, and Ahmed felt himself being thrown to the side. But he didn't let go. He couldn't let go. If he let go, if this man got control of the gun again, more people would die. David would die. Leah would die. All those people on the beach would die. So Ahmed held on. They struggled on the bridge deck, rolling and thrashing. Ahmed could feel the gunman trying to bring the shotgun around, trying to point it at him. His hands found the barrel, hot from repeated firing, and he pushed it away, even as the heat burned his palms. The gunman was shouting something, muffled by his mask, but Ahmed couldn't hear him over the ringing in his ears. And then Ahmed saw an opening. The gunman had been so focused on maintaining control of his weapon that he had left himself off balance. Ahmed, acting purely on instinct, shifted his weight and pushed. Not hard. He didn't have the strength for hard, but enough. The gunman's foot slipped on the blood-slicked deck, and he stumbled backward. His grip on the shotgun loosened, just for a second. It was enough. Ahmed wrenched the weapon away, his hands screaming in protest as the hot barrel seared his skin. The shotgun came free, and for a moment, Ahmed held it, this heavy, deadly thing that represented so much terror and death. He had never held a gun before, had never wanted to. The weight of it felt wrong in his hands. The gunman realized what had happened and lunged forward, reaching for the weapon. But Ahmed didn't try to use it. He didn't try to shoot. Instead, he did the only thing that made sense in that moment of pure panic and desperation. He threw the shotgun over the bridge railing. The weapon tumbled end over end, falling 30 feet before landing in the sand below with a heavy thud. Out of reach. Out of play. Harmless. The gunman stared at Ahmed with eyes visible through the ski mask, eyes full of rage and disbelief. For a moment, they just looked at each other, both breathing hard, both bloodied and bruised. And then the gunman turned and ran, sprinting toward the far end of the bridge where his accomplice was still firing. Ahmed collapsed against the railing, his entire body shaking. He had done it. He had actually done it. The gun was gone. The immediate threat was neutralized. His vision was starting to tunnel, black spots dancing at the edges. He thought he might pass out. He thought he might vomit. He thought. The second gunshot brought him back to reality. The other gunman, the one Ahmed hadn't reached, was still active, still firing. From his position on the bridge, Ahmed could see him clearly now. He was younger than the first gunman, or at least he moved with more nervous energy. His shots were less controlled, more panicked. He was firing in sweeping arcs, not aiming at specific targets, just trying to hit as many people as possible. And then Ahmed heard the sirens. Police. They were coming. Ahmed could see the flashing lights in the distance, multiple vehicles approaching at high speed. Help was almost here. He just needed to hold on a little longer. Just a little longer. But the second gunman heard the sirens too, and instead of surrendering, instead of fleeing, he did something that made Ahmed's blood run cold. He turned his weapon toward the overturned pavilion, toward David's family, and took deliberate aim. Later, when people would ask Ahmed why he did what he did next, he wouldn't have a good answer. He was exhausted. He was injured. He was terrified. Every reasonable thought in his head was telling him that he had done enough, that he had saved lives, that the police were seconds away, and they would handle it from here. But Ahmed didn't listen to reasonable thoughts. He pushed off the railing and ran again, toward the second gunman, toward the rifle, toward certain death. The gunman saw him coming at the last second. His head snapped around, eyes widening in surprise behind his mask. He tried to turn the rifle, tried to bring it to bear on this new threat. But Ahmed was already there, crashing into him with the last reserves of energy he had left. They went down hard, Ahmed on top, driving the gunman into the concrete deck with all his weight. The rifle clattered away, skittering across the bridge. Ahmed's hands found the gunman's mask and he ripped it off, needing to see the face of the person who had tried to murder innocent people. Needing to make him human, to make him real. The face underneath was young. Shockingly young. Couldn't have been more than 19 or 20. And terrified. The bravado was gone, replaced by pure fear as he stared up at Ahmed with wide eyes. "Please," the young man gasped. "Please don't. Police! Don't move!" The command came from behind Ahmed, loud and authoritative. He froze, his hand still on the young gunman's shoulders, and slowly raised his head. 3 police officers were on the bridge, weapons drawn and pointed directly at them. For a moment, Ahmed's exhausted brain couldn't process what was happening. Were they going to shoot him? Did they think he was one of the attackers? "I'm not," he started to say, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. "I was trying to—" "It's okay," one of the officers said, lowering his weapon slightly. His voice was gentler now, like he was talking to a scared animal. "We saw what you did. We've got him now. You can let go." Ahmed looked down at his hands, still gripping the young gunman's shoulders. They were shaking so badly he could barely control them. Slowly, carefully, he released his grip and pushed himself backward, sliding away from the suspect. His legs wouldn't support his weight, so he just sat there on the blood-stained bridge deck, watching as police officers swarmed the area. The young gunman was rolled onto his stomach and handcuffed. The first gunman, the one Ahmed had disarmed, was already in custody, captured while trying to flee the far side of the bridge. Ahmed watched it all happen with a strange sense of detachment, as if he were watching a movie rather than living through reality. And then he heard a voice he recognized. "Ahmed! Ahmed!" David Rosenberg was running toward the bridge, police officers trying to hold him back. His face was streaked with tears, and he was shouting Ahmed's name over and over. "That's my friend. That's the man who saved us. Let me through." One of the officers near Ahmed spoke into his radio. "We need paramedics on the bridge. Multiple injured, including the civilian who engaged the suspects." "Injured?" Ahmed looked down at himself and was surprised to see blood. A lot of blood. Some of it was probably from the gunman, but some was definitely his. His hands were burned from the hot gun barrel. His shoulder was already swelling where he had tackled the first shooter. His ribs felt like they might be cracked. But he was alive. Against all odds, impossibly, he was alive. The next few minutes passed in a blur. Paramedics arrived and began treating him while police secured the scene. Ahmed answered questions mechanically. Yes, he had disarmed the first suspect. Yes, he had engaged the second one. No, he didn't know why he had done it. David was allowed through the police cordon and immediately fell to his knees beside Ahmed, crying openly now. "You saved my family," he kept saying. "You saved my daughter. You saved my son. You saved us all." Ahmed wanted to say something profound, something worthy of the moment, but all that came out was, "Is everyone okay? Is Leah okay? Jacob?" "They're fine," David managed through his tears. "They're all fine because of you." As paramedics loaded Ahmed onto a stretcher, he could see the full scope of the beach below. The celebration was destroyed, tables overturned, decorations scattered, candles extinguished. But people were moving. Survivors were helping the injured. Families were reuniting. The scene was chaotic and tragic, but it was no longer a massacre. The killing had stopped. Because Ahmed Ahmadi, an ordinary software engineer who just wanted to enjoy an evening with his friend, had done the most extraordinary thing imaginable. He had run toward the gunfire instead of away from it.